It was meant to be a quiet morning of remembrance, nothing dramatic, no headlines, just raw, private grief. Emily Harper arrived alone at Greenview Cemetery, as she had every Sunday for the past 3 months. She wore her brother Noah's faded denim jacket, which he'd slung over his shoulders after soccer practice, still carrying his scent, grass, leather, and carefree youth. In her hand was his old keychain, a scuffed metal charm he'd always carried. She walked slowly to his grave, the crunch of gravel under her sneakers the only sound in the chilly air. Kneeling, she placed her hand on the cold headstone, his name, his birth and death dates, just 18 years carved between them. Her fingers traced the letters, and tears came, silent and searing, her body shaking with the weight of loss. This was where she felt him still. 20 minutes later, a black SUV rolled up, its Greenview Homeowners Association emblem gleaming like a badge of petty power. Out stepped Margaret Voss, the HOA president, a woman in her late 60s with flawless hair and a navy blazer, her eyes cold as marble. Clutching a tablet, she marched toward Emily with the precision of someone who thrived on control. "We've had noise complaints," she said, her voice sharp and devoid of warmth. "You're violating our peace ordinance." Emily looked up, eyes red, voice trembling. I'm at my brother's grave." A nearby man, holding roses, snapped. "She's mourning, for God's sake." Margaret ignored him. "You're disturbing others," she said, as if Emily were a vandal. Within minutes, a police cruiser arrived. 2 officers approached, one older, face unreadable, the other young, eager, fingers twitching at his belt. "Miss Harper," the older one said, "you're causing a disturbance on private property. You need to leave." Emily's voice cracked. "Arrest me for grieving?" But they didn't hesitate. They grabbed her arms, cuffed her wrists, and led her away as gasps erupted from onlookers. Someone's phone captured it all, and by noon, the video was everywhere. Across town, David Harper sat in his home office, surrounded by legal books and family photos. A former federal prosecutor turned advocate for veterans, he was drafting a community proposal when his phone buzzed. A neighbor had sent the video. He watched in silence, his face still, but his eyes burned. Closing his laptop, he grabbed his coat and muttered, "This ends now." The next morning, Emily was home, curled on the couch under a blanket, her hands shaking as she avoided her phone. She hadn't eaten, hadn't spoken much. David watched from the kitchen, his heart heavy with a father's helplessness. Then he saw the HOA's statement online. "Greenview HOA is committed to maintaining order, even in emotional circumstances. Rules apply to all." No apology, no remorse, just cold defiance. Emily read it, her face crumpling. "I shouldn't have gone," she whispered, and those words cut David deeper than any insult. That afternoon, a call came from the HOA, offering to resolve this peacefully. David hung up without a word. He knew silence would only breed more abuse. In his office, he opened a new document, Harper vs. Greenview HOA. This wasn't a complaint, it was war. David hadn't been a prosecutor in years, but his instincts were sharp. He gathered evidence, 5 angles of the arrest video, witness statements, and police logs. He uncovered inconsistencies in the officers' reports and requested body cam footage, leveraging old contacts to cut through red tape. Then he dug deeper, finding 3 buried cases, other mourners harassed by the HOA, their stories silenced. A veteran detained for leaving a flag, a mother hospitalized after a panic attack, a teen shamed for cleaning a headstone. None had made the news, until now. One night, Emily stood in his doorway, watching him work amid legal pads and coffee mugs. "You're suing them?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. David looked up, his eyes fierce yet calm. "No," he said. "I'm tearing them apart." 3 weeks later, the local news aired a segment that shattered Greenview's facade. The footage of Emily's arrest played unedited, her silent grief deafening. In an interview, Emily spoke plainly, no tears, just truth, about Noah, the cuffs, The shame of being treated like a criminal. The clip went viral, sparking outrage. Reporters swarmed the cemetery gates. David stood before them, not in a tired sweater but a sharp blazer, a folder of evidence under his arm. "Today," he said, voice steady, "I'm filing a class action lawsuit against Greenview HOA for abuse of power, emotional harm, and violating the right to grieve. Grief is not a crime, it's human." The crowd was silent, then erupted. Margaret Voss issued a weak statement, regrets, reviews, fairness, but no one cared. Protests formed outside the HOA office, signs reading, "Grief is not a crime," and "HOA equals tyranny." Board members resigned, one leaking an open letter exposing Margaret's obsession with disruptive mourners. The HOA's legal team stalled, begging to settle, but David refused. More plaintiffs joined, widows, teens, veterans, each with a story of harassment. Greenview wasn't just a neighborhood anymore, it was a symbol of unchecked power. Then came the turning point. Sarah Klein, the HOA's treasurer, broke ranks. At a quiet diner, she slid a flash drive to David. "Everything's here," she said, her voice heavy. "Emails, recordings, logs." Margaret called the cemetery a control tool. She planned Emily's arrest to set an example. David took the drive, his fingers steady. "This could ruin you," he warned. Sarah nodded. "I'm ready." A week later, CNN aired a bombshell. Leaked documents expose Greenview HOA's harassment. Margaret's voice played, smug and calculating, detailing how to silence mourners and manipulate police. The nation reeled. Civil rights lawyers pounced, federal investigators circled, and other HOAs scrambled to distance themselves. Margaret fled, vanishing overnight, but the U.S. Marshals found her in a Chicago motel, cuffed her, and charged her with conspiracy and obstruction. Back home, Emily watched the news, her face unreadable. David sat beside her. "Are you proud?" he asked softly. She stared ahead. "No," she said. "But I'm not afraid anymore." That was enough. The state launched a probe into the police. 3 officers were suspended, and old body cam footage resurfaced. The city council debated dissolving HOAs entirely, a once unthinkable idea now real. David's lawsuit grew, dubbed a public interest case, cited by senators and scholars. 3 months later, David and Emily returned to the cemetery with a group of students carrying carnations for Noah. Emily knelt at his grave, placing a flower beside his keychain, her breathing calm. She didn't cry, she didn't need to. Near the entrance, a new sign stood. "You may cry here. You may love it here. You may remember here. Fear has no place in this ground." David had written it, not as a lawyer, but as a father. The fight wasn't over, courts loomed, delays piled up, but the truth had won. Emily could mourn freely, and no one could take that from her again. Greenview's reign was broken, and the nation was watching, forced to ask, when did grief become a crime? What do you think? Should HOAs have this much power? Share your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear your take on this shocking story and what it means for community control. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's keep this conversation going.